Hey, have you ever wondered who actually gets to decide all the rules? You know, the big stuff. Or how a simple idea can turn into a law for the entire country. Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on Canada's government. Think of this as your user's guide to the whole system. Ready? Let's get into it.
So here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll tackle the big question, what even is government? Then we're going to meet the three main groups that run the show. After that, we'll follow the journey of a law, from just an idea to an actual rule. We'll also dig into the media's super important job. And finally, we'll talk about how you can make your voice heard in all this.
All right, first things first. Before we get into all the nitty-gritty details, let's zoom out a little bit. Let's start with the most basic question of all. What is a government? And, why do we even need one?
Seriously, just think about that for a second. In a country with millions and millions of people, who gets to be in charge? Who has the power to make these huge decisions that affect every single one of us? It's a pretty big deal, right?
And here's our answer. Simply put, a government is the group, the official body, that has the power to make decisions for a society. They're the ones setting the rules for everything from our schools and hospitals to the stuff we see every day, like traffic laws. They handle the big picture.
Okay, but it's not just one big blob of power. Canada's government is actually split into 3 different parts, and each one has a very specific job. The best way to think about it is like a giant group project where everyone has their own role to play to make sure it all works properly.
So here's what that group project looks like. You can see it's split into 3 teams: the executive, the legislative, and the judicial branches. Now this setup is really, really smart. It's designed so that no single group can have too much power. It's kind of like having 3 people check over your homework. It helps catch mistakes and keeps things fair.
First up, we've got the executive branch. Let's call them the doers. This is the team led by the Prime Minister and their chosen advisors, called the Cabinet. Their main job is to come up with ideas for laws, put existing laws into action, and just run the country day to day. They're basically steering the ship. Next, meet the legislative branch, or the lawmakers. This is where those ideas for laws get debated, changed, and voted on. This branch is made up of 2 parts: the House of Commons, which has elected members of Parliament, or MPs, and the Senate. And their most important job? To represent the interests of everyday Canadians, like you and me. And finally, there's the judicial branch. These are the referees. This is our whole court system, all the way up to the highest court, the Supreme Court of Canada. And here's the key thing. They're completely independent. Their job is to interpret the laws and make sure they're being applied fairly. They're the ones who can blow the whistle if one of the other branches breaks the rules.
Okay, so we've met the team members, but how do they actually work together to get something done, like creating a new law? Well, it's a pretty wild journey that starts with just an idea and has to go through a whole bunch of steps before it becomes a real rule.
And here's the roadmap for that journey. It all starts with something called a bill. That's just the official name for a proposed law. First, it gets debated and voted on by the MPs in the House of Commons. If it passes, it moves on to the Senate for another look. If they approve it too, it goes for royal assent. That's when the Governor General signs it, and boom, it is officially a law.
So, there's all this stuff happening. Debates, votes, new laws. But how do we actually find out about any of it? I mean, how do we know what our government is up to? Well, for most of us, that's where the media comes in. They're our window into what's going on.
And the media has a massive responsibility. It's not just about reporting facts. It's their job to connect the dots for us, to explain how the government's actions are actually going to affect our lives. They help us understand what's at stake, and they play a huge part in holding our leaders accountable.
But there's something you've got to watch out for when you're consuming news. It's called bias. Bias is basically when a news story leans one way. Maybe because it's only telling one side of the story, or it's based on some assumptions that haven't been questioned. It's like only hearing one person's version of an argument. So what does that mean for us? It means we have to be smart about how we get our news. We have to be critical thinkers. So next time you're reading an article or watching a news report, ask yourself this one simple question. Am I getting the whole story here? Are they showing all sides of this issue fairly? That's how you become a really informed citizen. And that brings us to our last stop on the tour. And honestly, it might be the most important one, because this whole system we've been talking about, it isn't just about politicians and journalists. It's also about you. You actually have a role to play. You have the power to persuade.
And hey, don't just take it from me. Check out this quote from a grade 9 student. They used persuasion to get a new computer. They didn't just ask for it, they made their case. They did research, they explained the positive points, and it worked. You probably do this all the time without even thinking about it.
And you can use those exact same skills for bigger things, like an issue you care about in your school or your community. The steps are pretty simple. First, be really clear about your idea. Know your audience and what matters to them. Do your homework so you can back up what you're saying with facts. And finally, speak clearly and with confidence. It's amazing what you can accomplish.
All right, that was a lot, I know. Let's do a super fast recap. We learned that Canada's government is split into 3 branches to keep power balanced. We followed the journey of a bill as it becomes a law. We talked about how the media is our connection to the government and why we have to watch out for bias. And most importantly, we learned that you, yes you, have the power to be persuasive and make a difference.
Okay, before we wrap up, here are 2 quick questions to see what you remember. First, what's the main job of the legislative branch? And second, what's that one key question you should always ask yourself when you're getting news about the government? Thanks so much for tuning in. Now, get out there and stay informed.